Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, Latin, Sancta Sophia, Sancta Sapientia, Turkish, Ayasofya, was a Greek Orthodox Christian patriarchal basilica, later an imperial mosque, and now a museum in Istanbul, Turkey. For the date of its construction in 537 AD, and until 1453, it served as an Orthodox cathedral and seat of the Patriarch of Constantinople, except between 1204 and 1261, when it was converted by the Fourth Crusaders to a Roman Catholic cathedral under the Latin Empire of Constantinople. The building was a mosque from the 29th of May 1453 until 1931. It was then secularized and opened as a museum on the 1st of February 1935. Famous in particular for its massive dome, it is considered the epitome of Byzantine architecture and is said to have changed the history of architecture. It remained the world's largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years, until Seville Cathedral was completed in 1520. The current building was originally constructed as a church between 532 and 537 on the orders of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, and was the third Church of the Holy Wisdom to occupy the site, the previous two having both been destroyed by rioters. It was designed by the Greek geometers Isidore of Miletus and Anthemius of Tralles. The church was dedicated to the wisdom of God, the Logos, the second person of the Holy Trinity, its patronal feast taking place on the 25th of December, the commemoration of the birth of the incarnation of the Logos in Christ, although sometimes referred to as Sancta Sophia, Sophia being the phonetic spelling in Latin of the Greek word for wisdom. Its full name in Greek is Nu Alpha Sigma Tau Sigma Gamma Iota Alpha Sigma Tau Omicron Theta Epsilon Omicron Sigma Omicron Phi Iota Alpha Sigma Naos Tes Agies Tu Theosophias, Shrine of the Holy Wisdom of God. The church contained a large collection of holy relics and featured, among other things, a 15-meter silver iconostasis, the focal point of the Eastern Orthodox Church for nearly 1,000 years. The building witnessed the excommunication of Patriarch Michael I Cerularius on the part of Humbert of Silva Candida, the papal envoy of Pope Leo IX in 1054, an act which is commonly considered the start of the Great Schism. In 1453, Constantinople was conquered by the Ottoman Turks under Sultan Mehmed II, who ordered this main church of Orthodox Christianity converted into a mosque. By that point, the church had fallen into a state of disrepair. Nevertheless, the Christian cathedral made a strong impression on the new Ottoman rulers and they decided to convert it into a mosque. The bells, altar, iconostasis, and sacrificial vessels and other relics were removed, and the mosaics depicting Jesus, his mother Mary, Christian saints and angels were also removed or plastered over. Islamic features, such as the mihrab, minbar, and four minarets were added. It remained a mosque until 1931, when it was closed to the public for 4 years. It was reopened in 1935 as a museum by the Republic of Turkey. Hagia Sophia was, as of 2014, the second most visited museum in Turkey, attracting almost 3.3 million visitors annually. According to data released by the Turkish Culture and Tourism Ministry, Hagia Sophia was Turkey's most visited tourist attraction in 2015. From its initial conversion until the construction of the nearby Sultan Ahmed Mosque in 1616, it was the principal mosque of Istanbul. The Byzantine architecture of the Hagia Sophia served as inspiration for many other Ottoman mosques, such as the Blue Mosque, the Seyzade Mosque, the Süleymaniye Mosque, the Rustam Pasha Mosque, and the Kilikale Pasha Mosque. History. First Church. The first church on the site was known as the Mu Epsilon Gamma Alpha Lambda Eta Kappa Kappa Lambda Eta Sigma Iota Alpha, or in Latin, Magna Ecclesia. because of its larger dimensions in comparison to the contemporary churches in the city. Inaugurated on 15 February 360 by the Arian bishop Eudoxius of Antioch, it was built next to the area where the imperial palace was being developed. The nearby Hagia Irene church was completed earlier and served as cathedral until the great church was completed. Both churches acted together as the principal churches of the Byzantine Empire. Writing in 440, Socrates of Constantinople claimed that the church was built by Constantius II, who was working on it in 346. A tradition which is not older than the 7th–8th century, reports that the edifice was built by Constantine the Great. Zonaras reconciles the two opinions, writing that Constantius had repaired the edifice consecrated by Eusebius of Nicomedia after it had collapsed, since Eusebius was bishop of Constantinople from 339 to 341, and Constantine died in 337. It seems possible that the first church was erected by the latter. The edifice was built as a traditional Latin colonnaded basilica with galleries and a wooden roof. It was preceded by an atrium. It was claimed to be one of the world's most outstanding monuments at the time. The Patriarch of Constantinople John Chrysostom came into a conflict with Empress Eudoxia, wife of the Emperor Arcadius, and was sent into exile on 20 June 404. During the subsequent riots, this first church was largely burned down. Nothing remains of the first church today. Second church. A second church was ordered by Theodosius II, who inaugurated it on 10 October 415. The basilica with a wooden roof was built by architect Rufinus. A fire started during the tumult of the Nika revolt and burned the second Hagia Sophia to the ground on 13–14 January 532. Several marble blocks from the second church survive to the present. Among them are reliefs depicting 12 lambs representing the 12 apostles. Originally part of a monumental front entrance, they now reside in an excavation pit adjacent to the museum's entrance after they were discovered in 1935 beneath the western courtyard by A. M. Schneider. Further digging was forsaken for fear of impinging on the integrity of the building. Third church on 23 February 532, only a few weeks after the destruction of the second basilica, Emperor Justinian I decided to build a third and entirely different basilica, larger and more majestic than its predecessors. Justinian chose physicist Isidore of Miletus and mathematician Anthemius of Tralles as architects. Anthemius, however, died within the first year of the endeavor. The construction is described in the Byzantine historian Procopius on buildings. Columns and other marbles were brought from all over the empire, throughout the Mediterranean. The idea of these columns being spoils from cities such as Rome and Ephesus is a later invention. Even though they were made specifically for Hagia Sophia, the columns show variations in size. More than 10,000 people were employed. This new church was contemporaneously recognized as a major work of architecture. The theories of Heron of Alexandria may have been utilized to address the challenges presented by building such an expansive dome over so large a space. The emperor, together with the Patriarch Menas, inaugurated the new basilica on 27 December 537, 5 years and 10 months after construction start. With much pomp, the mosaics inside the church were, however, only completed under the reign of Emperor Justin II. Hagia Sophia was the seat of the Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople and a principal setting for Byzantine imperial ceremonies, such as coronations. Like other churches throughout Christendom, the basilica offered sanctuary from persecution to outlaws. Earthquakes in August 553 and on the 14th of December 557 caused cracks in the main dome and eastern half-dome. The main dome collapsed completely during a subsequent earthquake on the 7th of May 558, destroying the ambon, altar, and ciborium. The crash was due mainly to the too high bearing load and to the enormous shearing load of the dome, which was too flat. These caused the deformation of the piers which sustained the dome. The emperor ordered an immediate restoration. He entrusted it to Isidorus, the younger nephew of Isidore of Miletus, who used lighter materials and elevated the dome by 30 feet, giving the building its current interior height of 55.6 meters. Moreover, Isidorus changed the dome type, erecting a ribbed dome with pendentives, whose diameter lay between 32.7 and 33.5 meters. Under Justinian's orders, 8 Corinthian columns were disassembled from Baalbek, Lebanon, and shipped to Constantinople around 560. This reconstruction, giving the church its present 6th-century form, was completed in 562. The Byzantine poet Paul the Silentiary composed a long epic poem, known as Ekphrasis, for the rededication of the basilica presided over by Patriarch Eutychius on the 23rd of December 562. In 726, the Emperor Leo the Isaurian issued a series of edicts against the veneration of images, ordering the army to destroy all icons, ushering in the period of Byzantine iconoclasm. At the time, all religious pictures and statues were removed from the Hagia Sophia. After a brief reprieve under Empress Irene, the iconoclasts made a comeback. Emperor Theophilus was strongly influenced by Islamic art, which forbids the representation of living beings. He had 2-winged bronze doors with his monograms installed at the southern entrance of the church. The basilica suffered damage, first in a great fire in 859, and again in an earthquake on the 8th of January 869 that made a half-dome collapse. Emperor Basil I ordered the church repaired. After the great earthquake of the 25th of October 989, which collapsed the western dome arch, Emperor Basil II asked for the Armenian architect Tridat, creator of the cathedrals of Varni and Ajna, to direct the repairs. He erected again and reinforced the fallen dome arch, and rebuilt the west side of the dome with 15 dome ribs. The extent of the damage required 6 years of repair and reconstruction. The church was reopened on the 13th of May 994. At the end of the reconstruction, the church's decorations were renovated, including the additions of paintings of 4 immense cherubs, a new depiction of Christ on the dome, burial cloth of Christ shown on Fridays, and on the apse a new depiction of the Virgin Mary holding Jesus between the apostles Peter and Paul. On the great side arches were painted the prophets and the teachers of the church. In his book De Ceremonias Auri Byzantini, Emperor Constantine VII wrote a detailed account of the ceremonies held in the Hagia Sophia by the emperor and the patriarch. Upon the capture of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, the church was ransacked and desecrated by the Crusaders, as described by the Byzantine historian Knight Tascioniates. During the Latin occupation of Constantinople, the church became a Roman Catholic cathedral. Baldwin of Constantinople was crowned emperor on the 16th of May 1204 in Hagia Sophia at a ceremony which which closely followed Byzantine practices. Enrico Dandolo, the Doge of Venice who commanded the second invasion of the city by the Latin Crusaders in 1204, is buried inside the church, probably in the upper eastern gallery. In the 19th century, an Italian restoration team placed a cenotaph marker near the probable location, which is still visible today. The marker is frequently mistaken by tourists as being a medieval marker of the actual tomb of the Doge. The real tomb was destroyed by the Ottomans after the conquest of Constantinople in 1453 and subsequent conversion of Hagia Sophia into a mosque. After the recapture in 1261 by the Byzantines, the church was in a dilapidated state. In 1317, Emperor Andronicus II ordered 4 new buttresses to be built in the eastern and northern parts of the church, financing them with the inheritance of his deceased wife Irene. New cracks developed in the dome after the earthquake of October 1344, and several parts of the building collapsed on the 19th of May 1346. Consequently, the church was closed until 1354, when repairs were undertaken by architects Astras and Peralta. Mosque. Constantinople was taken by the Ottomans on the 29th of May 1453. In accordance with the custom at the time, Sultan Mehmed II allowed his troops 3 days of unbridled pillage once the city fell, after which he would claim its contents for himself. Hagia Sophia was not exempted from the pillage, becoming its focal point as the invaders believed it to contain the greatest treasures of the city. Shortly after the city's defenses collapsed, pillagers made their way to the Hagia Sophia and battered down its doors. Throughout the siege, worshippers participated in the Holy Liturgy and prayer of the hours at the Hagia Sophia, and the church formed a refuge for many of those who were unable to contribute to the city's defense, such as women, children and elderly. Trapped in the church, congregants and refugees became spoils to be divided amongst the Ottoman invaders. The building was desecrated and looted, and occupants enslaved, violated or slaughtered, while elderly and infirm were killed. Women and girls were raped and the remainder chained and sold into slavery. Priests continued to perform Christian rites until stopped by the invaders. When the Sultan and his cohort entered the church, he insisted it should be at once transformed into a mosque. One of the ulama then climbed the pulpit and recited the Shahada. As described by several Western visitors, the church was in a dilapidated state, with several of its doors fallen from their hinges. Mehmed II ordered a renovation as well as the conversion. Mehmed attended the first Friday prayer in the mosque on the 1st of June 1453. Ayasofya became the first imperial mosque of Istanbul. To the corresponding waqf were endowed most of the existing houses in the city and the area of the future Topkapi Palace. From 1478, 2,360 shops, 1,300 houses, 4 caravanserais, 30 boza shops, and 23 shops of sheepheads and trotters gave their income to the foundation. Through the imperial charters of 1520 and 1547, shops and parts of the Head Bazaar and other markets were added to the foundation. Before 1481, a small minaret was erected on the southwest corner of the building, above the stair tower. Later, the subsequent Sultan, Bayezid II, built another minaret at the northeast corner. One of these collapsed after the earthquake of 1509, and around the middle of the 16th century they were both replaced by 2 diagonally opposite minarets built at the east and west corners of the edifice. In the 16th century, the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent brought back 2 colossal candlesticks from his conquest of Hungary. They were placed on either side of the mihrab. During the reign of Selim II, the building started showing signs of fatigue and was extensively strengthened with the addition of structural supports to its exterior by the great Ottoman architect Mimar Sinan, who is also considered one of the world's first earthquake engineers. In addition to strengthening the historic Byzantine structure, Sinan built the two additional large minarets at the western end of the building, the original Sultan's Lodge, and the Turb of Selim II to the southeast of the building in 1576–7 R 984. In order to do that, parts of the Patriarchate at the south corner of the building were pulled down the previous year. Moreover, the Golden Crescent was mounted on the top of the dome, while a respect zone 35 arson wide was imposed around the building, pulling down all the houses which in the meantime had nested around it. Later his turb hosted also 43 tombs of Ottoman princes. In 1594 R1004 Mimar Davud Aga built the turb of Murad III, where the Sultan and his Valida, Safiye Sultan, were later buried. The octagonal mausoleum of the son Mehmed III and his Valida was built next to it in 1608–1017 H by royal architect Dalgik Mehmet Aga. His son Mustafa I converted the baptistry into his turb. Murad III had also two large alabaster Hellenistic urns transported from Pergamon and placed on two sides of the nave. In 1717, under Sultan Ahmed III, the crumbling plaster of the interior was renovated, contributing indirectly to the preservation of many mosaics, which otherwise would have been destroyed by mosque workers. In fact, it was usual for them to sell mosaic stones, believed to be talismans, to the visitors. Sultan Mahmud I ordered the restoration of the building in 1739 and added a medres, an imaret and a library, and in 1740 a sad oven, thus transforming it into a Kulliya, i.e. social complex. At the same time a new Sultan's Lodge and a new mihrab were built inside. The most famous restoration of the Hagia Sophia was ordered by Sultan Abdülmecid and completed by 800 workers between 1847 and 1849, under the supervision of the Swiss-Italian architect brothers Gasper and Giuseppe Fossaccia. The brothers consolidated the domed vaults, straightened the columns, and revised the decoration of the exterior and the interior of the building. The mosaics in the upper gallery were uncovered and cleaned, although many were recovered for protection against further damage. The old chandeliers were replaced by new pendant ones. New gigantic circular framed discs medallions were hung on columns. These were inscribed with the names of Allah, Muhammad, the first four caliphs Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali, and the two her children of Muhammad, Hassan and Hussein, by the calligrapher Kazask Mustafa Izd Effendi. In 1850 the architect Fossaccia built a new Sultan's Lodge in a Neo-Byzantine style connected to the royal pavilion behind the mosque. They also renovated the minbar and mihrab. Outside the main building, the minarets were repaired and altered so that they were of equal height. A timekeeper's building and a new madrasa were built. When the restoration was finished, the mosque was reopened with ceremonial pomp on the 13th of July 1849. Museum. In 1935, the first Turkish president and founder of the Republic of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, transformed the building into a museum. The carpets were removed and the marble floor decorations such as the omphalion appeared for the first time in centuries, while the white plaster covering many of the mosaics was removed. Nevertheless, the condition of the structure deteriorated, and the World Monuments Fund placed Hagia Sophia on 1996 World Monuments Watch, and again in 1998. The building's copper roof had cracked, causing water to leak down over the fragile frescoes and mosaics. Moisture entered from below as well. Rising groundwater had raised the level of humidity within the monument, creating an unstable environment for stone and paint. The WMF secured a series of grants from 1997 to 2002 for the restoration of the dome. The first stage of work involved the structural stabilization and repair of the cracked roof, which was undertaken with the participation of the Turkish Ministry of Culture. The second phase, the preservation of the dome's interior, afforded the opportunity to employ and train young Turkish conservators in the care of mosaics. By 2006, the WMF project was complete, though many other areas of Hagia Sophia continued to require significant stability improvement, restoration and conservation. Hagia Sophia is currently the second most visited museum in Turkey, attracting almost 3.3 million visitors annually, although use of the complex as a place of worship was strictly prohibited. In 2006, the Turkish government allowed the allocation of a small room in the museum complex to be used as a prayer room for Christian and Muslim museum staff, and since 2013 from the minarets of the museum the muezzin sings the call to prayer twice per day, in the afternoon. In 2007, Greek-American politician Chris Spirou launched an international organization, Free Hagia Sophia Council, championing the cause of restoring the building to its original function as a Christian church. Since the early 2010s, several campaigns and government high officials, notably Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister Bülent Arınç in November 2013, have been demanding that Hagia Sophia be converted into a mosque again. In 2015, in retaliation for the acknowledgement by Pope Francis of the Armenian genocide, the Mufti of Ankara, Mefal Hisli, stated that he believes the conversion of Hagia Sophia into a mosque will be accelerated. On July 1, 2016, a muezzin's call to prayer reverberated inside the Hagia Sophia for the first time in 85 years.